In a small western town where wild mustangs were hunted and tamed for show, a 13-year-old poor boy stunned the entire horse-riding community. He didn't come with whips or reins, but with an old book and the eyes of someone who'd lost his mother to cancer. People laughed, called it a joke, until the so-called crazy horse bowed its head to him without a single rope. The wind swept through the Texas panhandle like a wave of dry heat, carrying with it the red dust and the scent of sun-baked soil. Black Hollow Ranch sat tucked into a barren valley, flanked by rotting fence posts and a permanent blend of horse sweat and human toil. This wasn't a place for tourists or the faint of heart. Black Hollow had earned its reputation across Hemp Hill County for one thing: taming the so-called untamable mustangs. That day, people gathered from nearby towns, armed with cameras, cowboy hats, and dreams of witnessing someone finally ride Midnight, a jet-black stallion that had once shattered a Marine veteran's arm and put a professional wrangler in the hospital for 6 weeks with a crushed pelvis. Anyone who dared step into Midnight's pen usually left with broken bones or a broken ego. The ranch owner, Wade Henley, broad-shouldered, bearded, with a voice like gravel, sat on the porch steps, an unlit cigarette dangling from his lips. He'd served in the Marines and built the ranch using his military pension. He wasn't one to smile, and it took a lot to impress him. Then a boy stepped through the creaky wooden gate, carrying a weathered backpack, his canvas shoes caked in mud, heels worn to threads, and his sun-browned face rough as the earth beneath him. "I'd like to try Midnight," the boy said, standing tall with both hands gripping the backpack straps. Laughter erupted across the yard. A man in a Stetson whistled. A woman with a camera snapped pictures like crazy. "Who are you, kid?" Wade asked, voice lined with both surprise and irritation. Jesse Dillard. I live in the trailer park on the edge of Canadian." The laughter intensified. A boy from the trailer park. Where electricity flickered, food came from cans, and shoes were patched with duct tape wanted to try the stallion that had tossed a decorated rider? "Kid," Wade stood, brushing dirt from his pants. "You know that horses sent 3 folks to the ER?" "I know," Jesse nodded. "But I don't think he's crazy. I think he's scared." For a second the crowd fell silent. Then laughter erupted again. "Did you all hear that? Scared?" Someone snorted. "That horse?" Wade stared at Jesse. There was something in the boy's eyes. Not recklessness, but something quieter, something still. "All right," Wade spat to the dirt. "You want a shot? Go ahead, but don't come crying when you're eating sand for lunch." The pen gate groaned open. The smell of horse sweat, rust, and dry manure filled the air. Jesse dropped his bag gently to the ground, uncinched the drawstring, and pulled out a dog-eared book, Charlotte's Web, its cover frayed and pages yellowed. He didn't bring a whip. No saddle. No reins. Midnight stood at the far end of the pen, eyes burning like coal, ears perked, hooves scraping the dirt with nervous energy. Jesse stepped in slowly, never locking eyes with the horse. Instead, he sat down near the wooden wall a few yards away. Then he opened the book. Once upon a time, there was a pig named Wilbur. Jesse read, voice steady but soft. Midnight snorted, wheeled around. Dust kicked into the air. The stallion reared, slamming his hooves against the wall, flinging the metal water trough across the pen. "Kid's nuts," someone muttered from behind the fence. But Jesse didn't move. He kept reading. His voice trembled slightly, but it never cracked. He told Midnight about Charlotte the spider, about words in a web, about friendship. Midnight whinnied, charged, galloped in a frenzy, a black blur crashing through the pen like smoke on fire. Still, Jesse sat. Sweat poured down his brow, but he didn't flinch. He knew, if he yelled or stood up, the horse would see him like all the others, a threat. Time seemed to freeze under the windy Texas sky, and in the swirling dust, Jesse Dillard, a poor boy, motherless, read stories to a wild horse that didn't trust anyone. And somewhere, deep in Midnight's fierce eyes, something flickered. Not trust, but hesitation. And for Jesse, that tiny flicker of hesitation was enough not to give up. For the next 3 days after that reckless attempt, Jesse returned to Black Hollow every afternoon. Right when the sun dipped behind the sparse treetops in the west, casting a red-orange hue over the dust and the weathered wood. He came quietly, as if carried by the wind. No one invited him. No one saw him off. The ranch hands had stopped laughing. They didn't understand what the boy was trying to do, nor why Wade Henley, the man known for being cold as iron, hadn't told Jesse to get the hell out of Midnight's pen. Maybe Wade was curious. Or maybe he saw something in the boy's eyes that reminded him of his younger self, a quiet kind of stubbornness that didn't argue, but didn't back down either. Midnight, of course, was still Midnight. His eyes were pits of fire, the whites flashing every time someone passed by. He no longer screamed, but his hooves still pounded the dirt in heavy, measured thuds like warning drums. Jesse, however, had changed. On the first day, he just sat. On the second, he left a bundle of fresh hay. On the third, he cleaned the stall without a word. He moved like a ghost, never trying to impress. He didn't whisper sweet promises, didn't bring sugar cubes or apples to coax trust. Instead, he read. After Charlotte's Web, he opened The Call of the Wild. Each page seemed drawn from somewhere deep in his chest, echoing through the stall between the horse's heavy breaths and the drifting sand. One rainy afternoon, when thick clouds blanketed the sky like a heavy gray quilt, Jesse arrived soaked, jeans mud-splattered up to his knees. He sat down, pulled out an old notebook, and began to write, not someone else's story, his own. Midnight, he murmured. My mom used to say, sometimes the most beautiful things are also the ones people fear the most. Midnight raised his head, didn't step forward, but didn't turn away. The cold wind cut through the stall. Jesse shivered and pulled his collar tight. He kept writing, voice shaking. She died last year, stage 4 cancer. Before she passed, she told me, some horses aren't meant to be ridden, just listened to. Midnight's hooves clicked a little softer. Jesse lowered his head and drew slow circles in the dirt with a dry twig. He remembered that night. The trailer was silent except for the ticking clock and his mother's fading breaths. He'd held her hand, whispering old stories, just like now, with Midnight. After she died, Jesse had moved to Canadian to live with an uncle who worked as a welder and didn't care much for horses or boys who cried at night. Jesse went to school, did odd jobs, saved every cent. But deep inside, his mom's memory and the breath of horses never left him. At Black Hollow, for the first time, he didn't feel completely alone. One stormy night, unable to sleep, Jesse slipped out in a raincoat and biked the 2 miles of dirt road back to the ranch. The gate was locked. He climbed the fence, slipped, cut his knee. But he kept going. Inside Midnight's stall, it was pitch black. Lightning flashed now and then, casting shadows of a horse curled up tight in the corner. Jesse didn't go in. He stood just outside, watching the Mustang tremble, not from cold, but from something deeper. The horse was scared of something on the inside, not the thunder, memory. Jesse knew that feeling. He'd curled up like that, too, every time he heard his mother cough, every time a doctor stepped out shaking their head. Midnight, he whispered. I get it. You don't have to be scared alone. The horse didn't respond, but it didn't flee. Moments later, Jesse felt his eyes blur with tears. Not from wind, not from rain, but because in that darkness he didn't just see a horse, he saw himself. The next morning, Wade showed up early. Ranch hands told him about the kid sleeping outside the stall. He walked over and found Jesse slumped against the wooden fence, eyes shut, but not asleep like someone who'd just fought a war in his dreams. Midnight stood a few paces away. No kicking, no pacing, no turning away. But the way the horse looked at Jesse, unblinking. Unwary maid. Wade's brow tightened. Something was changing. Not in the horse. Between them. In that pale dawn light, between a boy with a broken heart and a horse robbed of its past, an invisible tether had begun to form. Not made of rope, but of shared pain understood in silence. And from that day on, no one called Jesse the crazy kid anymore. At least, not out loud. That day was chilly, the sun breaking through layers of gray clouds to cast a muted, ash-toned light across Black Hollow Ranch. Jesse sat as usual, back against the stall wall, reading aloud from The Old Man and the Sea, his voice low and broken by the wind and short breaths. What he didn't know was that, just a few yards behind the old wooden fence, another pair of eyes had been quietly watching every word. Riley Henley, 15, with light brown curls and skin pale as if she hadn't seen the sun in months, stood still. Her hands gripped the fence rails as if letting go might make her knees give out. Riley didn't like being seen, especially not near horses. But she couldn't look away from Jesse and Midnight. For 2 weeks now, she had watched them from a distance. At first, it was just curiosity. But slowly, it became something else, something she herself couldn't name. Riley had once been a promising show rider. Until that terrifying day in Nevada when the trailer carrying her and her horse, Copper, flipped on the highway en route to a national competition. She survived. Copper didn't. For weeks afterward, Riley didn't speak, didn't eat, shivered every time she heard hooves. She'd been sent to live with her foster father, Wade Henley, who believed that time and discipline could fix anything. But time had only buried the fear deeper. Then came Jesse, the poor kid from nowhere, walking into Midnight's stall like stepping into a hurricane with his eyes wide open. One afternoon, Jesse stood brushing dust from his pants and turned only to catch Riley's gaze flicker behind the fence. She froze. She almost turned to run. But Jesse didn't shout or laugh. He just lifted a hand in greeting, like waving to an old friend. "Hi," he said. "How long have you been standing there?" Riley was silent. Then softly, her voice rasped. "Not long." "Well, long enough to suffer through Hemingway," Jesse smiled, rubbing his knee. "I'm a pretty lousy narrator." Riley dropped her eyes, still gripping the fence. "Does Midnight like the stories?" she asked, half joking. Jesse nodded, dead serious. "He hasn't said, but he hasn't tried to kill me yet. So, I guess not the worst review." For the first time in months, Riley let out a laugh. Quiet, but real. From that day on, she didn't just stay behind the fence. She started inching closer to the stall. Not stepping inside, but close enough to hear Jesse clearly, and close enough for Midnight to know someone else was there. She began bringing sliced apples. Jesse would silently offer them into the pen, and Midnight ate them. Riley nodded, satisfied, though she never stepped over the threshold, as if the inside was a foreign world she wasn't yet ready to enter. The evening stretched longer. 2 kids, one who'd lost a mother, and one who'd lost a horse, sat beside each other, saying little, but never feeling alone. Riley told Jesse she used to ride really well. But since the crash, her hands went cold just nearing a stall. Jesse never told her to face her fears or be brave. He simply said, "I don't know what it feels like for you, but Midnight isn't Copper." "No one is Copper," Riley replied. "And no one is Midnight," Jesse said. "Maybe that means they both deserve to be understood for who they are now." Wade had been watching from a distance, and he was starting to worry something wasn't right. Partly because Riley, whom he'd tried so hard to bring back to normal, was now spending every afternoon around the Mustang stall. and partly because Jesse, a fatherless, motherless kid, had the nerve to walk into the world of broken bones and wild horses like he belonged. One evening, Wade called Jesse into his office. He poured a glass of water, leaned back, and stared with eyes like steel. "What are you planning to do with midnight?" Jesse looked up. His voice was honest and steady. "Nothing. I'm just here." "Do you know that horse has killed before?" Wade's words were sharp. "I know he's been starved, had his leg broken, and was dragged here by a chain," Jesse said, eyes unwavering. "If he's still standing after all that, I don't think he wants to die yet." Wade's jaw tightened. Silence lingered. Then he set the glass down and growled, "Starting tomorrow, you stay away from that pen. Riley, too." Jesse swallowed hard. "I'm not forcing anyone. Riley comes because she wants to." "That's not what I asked." When Jesse stepped out of the office, Riley was waiting in the hallway. One look at his face, and she knew. "He doesn't understand," Jesse murmured. "No one does," she whispered. They didn't say more, but something had shifted. The next day, Riley brought a handkerchief with a single blue feather tied to it. She knotted it on the edge of Midnight's stall door. Jesse looked at her, puzzled. "So he remembers us," she said. Jesse nodded. "We're not leaving, are we?" "Not if there's still a way back," she said. And so, even after being forbidden, they kept coming. Didn't enter the stall, didn't touch the horse. They just stood nearby, silent, watching each other and Midnight, as if three fractured souls were slowly finding a way to fit back together. No reins, no commands, just the quiet promise, "I'm not leaving." Spring at Black Hollow always carried a strange kind of tension, half excitement, half unease. It was the season for the annual horse taming showcase, when visitors from nearby towns, horse traders from Oklahoma and New Mexico, even parts of Texas, flocked to watch skilled riders wrestle with wild instincts under the hot sun. This year, the main event was Midnight. After all the rumors about the boy who whispers to wild horses, the same people who had laughed at Jesse now mocked him with sneers of curiosity. Makeshift wooden bleachers were erected in the ranch's main corral. Flags flapped wildly in the wind, and a massive banner hung over the entry. "The Mustang Challenge, $9,000 to ride Midnight." Jesse and Riley stood off to the side, watching the scene like it belonged to another world. A world where everything they'd built was now a spectacle. "You can't let them ride him," Riley said, her voice trembling. "I know," Jesse said, "but I can't stop them, unless—" He trailed off. A reckless thought had sparked in his mind. Meanwhile, Wade was reviewing the sign-up list names from Amarillo, Lubbock, even ex-military riders with years of experience, all armed with ropes, spurs, and reputations. Then he saw the last line. Jesse Dillard, 30 years old, no equipment. His face turned red. "Who the hell let this kid sign up?" he barked. No one answered. One of the ranch hands muttered, "He came early, signed up before the crowd arrived. Ridiculous, he's a damn child." "But rules are rules," said the old event coordinator with a shrug. "It's posted, it's official, can't erase it now." Wade gritted his teeth, then smirked. "Fine, let's see how he humiliates himself in front of a full house." That afternoon, the corral was packed, cold beers in plastic cups, smoke from barbecue grills, country music pounding from speakers. The crowd was wild cheering, placing bets, waiting for blood. One by one, seasoned riders entered the rings. Some roped half-trained horses, others did tricks with barely broken colts. Cheers erupted, boots stomped. Then came the final act. A voice echoed through the loudspeaker, "Our final rider today, a very special challenger from Black Hollow itself, the wildest Mustang we've ever had, Midnight, and the rider, Jesse Dillard." The crowd fell quiet. Then came the laughter, a skinny boy, matted hair, ripped shoes. Going up against midnight? A joke. A damn circus. But Jesse didn't hear the jeers. He only saw the horse nervous behind the stall door. The one he had read stories to, cleaned up after, looked into and seen pain that needed no words. He stepped into the arena barefoot. No saddle, no reins, no whip. Wade stood on the announcer's platform, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "Let's see what you've got, kid." Jesse walked to the center of the ring, 20 steps from the gate. He took a deep breath and spoke, just loud enough for one soul to hear. "If you don't choose me, I'll understand." The crowd hushed. The gate creaked open. Midnight exploded out, mane flared, hooves churning dirt like thunder. He spun, nostrils wide, muscles twitching, ready to destroy anything that dared move. Then his eyes found Jesse. And something shifted. He stopped. Jesse didn't move, didn't chase, didn't beg. Just stood there, open, still, unafraid. Midnight took a step, then another. Dust rose with each hoof fall. When they were a breath apart, Jesse lifted a hand not to touch, just to be present. Midnight bowed his head. Jesse climbed onto his back. No saddle, no reins, no commands, just a boy. And a horse that had once sent 3 men to the hospital. The arena froze. No one cheered. No one laughed. Jesse didn't do tricks. He didn't yell. He didn't show off. He simply sat, hand gently brushing the coarse mane. And the Mustang walked a single circle through the arena, slow and steady, as if carrying not a rider, but a soul coming home. When the circle ended, Jesse slid off. He bowed. Midnight bowed with him. Applause broke the silence. At first, hesitant, then louder, then wild, a thunderstorm of cheers. Wade stood frozen, his face pale. Riley burst from the fence, wrapping Jesse in a hug as the crowd roared around them. But in her eyes there was only Jesse and Midnight. And in Midnight's eyes there was no more fear, only trust, a performance without reins and without permission. The morning after the performance, the sun cast golden light across the pine ridges and the faded rooftops of Black Hollow, but no one paid much attention to the sunshine anymore. The story of Jesse and Midnight had blown far beyond the town's dusty borders like wildfire on the wind. The local newspaper splashed it on the front page. The boy who whispered to the wild horse. A Santa Fe radio station replayed the crowd's gasps from the show, and online. A grainy phone video taken by a student had already racked up over 300,000 views overnight. Jesse became a phenomenon, but Jesse himself didn't change. He still wore the same second-hand shirts, still mucked out stalls, still spent his afternoons beside Midnight, the one companion who never asked questions or demanded anything more than his presence. "You do know you're famous, right?" Riley said, walking up with 2 chilled sodas. "You made the Amarillo paper." Jesse shrugged. "That doesn't matter. So what do you want then?" He looked toward the stall, where Midnight chewed quietly on dry hay, as calm as a pasture pony. "I just want him to not be afraid anymore." But fame, especially unwanted fame, draws opportunists. Clive Drummond, a television mogul from Dallas known for cashing in on animal acts and reality shows, had watched Jesse's viral video at least 3 times. Sitting in a stretch limousine, swirling red wine, he grinned. "We've got gold here, Leo, living gold, that rides horses." Leo, his assistant, flipped through a file. 13 years old, no father, mother died 2 years ago, lives with a distant aunt, no legal representation. Perfect. Set the meeting. The meeting took place in Wade's office, under the whirring hum of a dying air conditioner and a wall lined with old horseshoes. Clive wore a velvet blazer and a smug grin. He laid a thick contract on the desk. "I want to take Jesse on tour. Training shows, freedom riding showcases. We'll cover everything: housing, tutors, insurance, the works. And of course, you, sir, will receive a generous cut. Wade thumbed through the papers, his lip twitching at the numbers. What about Jesse? He asked. Clive smiled wider. He'll thank us someday. Riley heard about the meeting from a stable hand. She ran to find Jesse, grabbing his wrist with both hands. You're not going to sign that, are you? Jesse shook his head. I'm not a circus act. Then don't let them treat you like one. But what Jesse feared wasn't fame. It was what the contract said about Midnight. According to the fine print, the horse would have to wear tack during performances, be put under command, and in some segments be controlled with a whip. We can't let them do this, Jesse said, but if I say no, Wade will just sell Midnight. He owns the rights. Riley squeezed his hand. We'll figure something out, but don't trade your trust for grown-ups' silence. The first show under contract was booked at a small arena in San Antonio. Thousands bought tickets. Suckers eager to witness the boy who tamed a fueled Mustang. Jesse was ushered backstage like a teen idol. Bright lights, sound checks, choreography, cold hands, cold hearts. He entered Midnight's holding stall, smaller, unfamiliar, stinking of smoke and sterilized rubber. The horse was trembling. Jesse's eyes dropped to the floor. A whip lay there, placed deliberately, testing him. The first segment, the MC's voice boomed, will feature Jesse guiding Midnight with nothing but a training whip. Let's welcome the Horse Whisperer. Jesse picked up the whip, stepped forward, then froze. He couldn't do this. His hand shook. His chest felt like it would shatter. His heart wasn't racing. It was rebelling. He looked up at the stands. He saw Clive. He saw Wade. He saw hundreds of faces waiting, not for a miracle, but for submission. Jesse dropped the whip. It clattered to the ground like a gunshot. No, someone screamed. The other stall. A stagehand had opened the wrong gate. An Andalusian stallion, half broken and skittish, bolted out. Startled by the shout, it reared. Jesse instinctively stepped between it and Midnight and took the full blow of a hoof to his chest. The news exploded like a thunderclap. Boy Whisperer injured in show incident. Wild Mustang escapes arena chaos. Was it all a scam? Clive appeared on morning shows with a solemn expression. We tried our best. Perhaps Jesse was just a passing miracle. We thank everyone for believing. Wade said nothing, but he did sign the transfer order. Midnight was sold set to be shipped to a livestock processing center in New Mexico within 72 hours. Jesse was still unconscious in a hospital bed. But Riley? Riley knew something was very, very wrong. The sharp scent of antiseptic, the cold hum of white light, and the steady beeping of a heart monitor were the first things Jesse noticed when he opened his eyes. The hospital ceiling was still. His chest felt like it was pinned beneath a boulder, every breath sliced upward like a blade to the throat. He turned his head slowly. Riley was slumped at the bedside, fast asleep, hand still gripping his like she was afraid he might vanish. Riley, he croaked. His voice was sandpaper. She jolted upright, eyes wide, cheeks streaked with dried tears, then broke into a smile so bright it was nearly blinding. Jesse, oh my God, you're awake. 3 fractured ribs, bruising along the shoulder. A minor concussion that had doctors warning him not to move for at least 3 weeks, but Jesse didn't care about any of that. What happened to Midnight? He asked, breath short. Riley bit her lip. She didn't know whether to lie or just break his heart. Finally, she pulled a folded sheet from her backpack. An auction listing, black Mustang, male, unruly, to be processed. Destination, slaughter facility, Lot 25, New Mexico. No, 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 Jesse whispered. Wade signed the sale papers the night you went under, Riley choked. He said midnight was useless now, not safe, not worth keeping. Jesse gripped the side rail so hard his knuckles bled. "I have to save him." "You can't even walk yet, Jesse. You just woke up." "Then you go. Do whatever you have to." That night, Riley returned to Black Hollow. She broke into Wade's office using a bobby pin and shaky hands. Rummaged through the filing cabinets, scattered folders, desk drawers, until she found the transport records. The pickup was scheduled for Saturday morning. Barely 48 hours left. She snapped pictures of everything. Then ran through the darkness to one place she knew still believed in the power of truth. Lorraine's house. The silver-haired reporter, voice rough as gravel, listened quietly while Riley spoke, frantic, breathless, soaked with urgency. Then Lorraine opened her old laptop, copied the files, reviewed every stamp, every signature. Her brows furrowed at one particular auction entry where Wade had claimed Midnight had been behaviorally rehabilitated. "Lies," she muttered. "If this horse was drugged or abused during training, it violates federal animal protection statutes." "Then help me tell everyone," Riley begged. Lorraine looked up. "No, child. You have to tell them." The next morning, back in the hospital, Riley helped Jesse sit up. He wore a hoodie, bandages tight around his ribs, one leg braced in a sling. But his eyes no longer belonged to a boy. They burned. "You sure?" Riley asked. "No, but I have to." Lorraine helped set up a live stream. One small camera, one dim hospital window behind him. Jesse sat in a wheelchair, the morning light falling softly across his hair. He held the microphone. "My name is Jesse Dillard," he began. "I'm not a hero. I'm not a horse trainer. I'm just a kid who once believed that a horse called Crazy might just need someone to sit quietly and listen." He paused, breathed in, spoke again. "Midnight didn't run because he's dangerous. He ran because he was scared, and because I picked up a whip. I'm sorry for that. But now they want to kill him, and they say that's normal. But no animal should be ended just because it refuses to perform." He leaned forward, voice shaking. "I'm begging you, if you believe in trust, help save Midnight." The live stream lasted barely 3 minutes. But in 4 hours, it was everywhere. Horse rescue communities across Texas and Colorado ignited. Animal rights groups called for signatures to block Midnight's execution. Mustang Wilds, a nonprofit based in Colorado, submitted an emergency petition to the New Mexico State Veterinary Board and a federal animal welfare attorney. Lorraine used every favor she had. She called NBC, CNN, Fox. Pushed Jesse's story to front pages. An online headline read, "The boy who rode with trust now pleads to save that trust." 3 days later, Jesse was wheeled into the local courthouse. Next to him sat Riley, holding his hand. Across the room stood a federal judge, flanked by prosecutors and state attorneys. "Wade Henley," the judge said, "you are charged with animal cruelty, falsification of livestock documentation, and violation of the Wild Animal Protection Act." Wade didn't glance at Jesse, didn't blink. Representatives from Mustang Wilds presented evidence-fake transport forms, illicit footage from training sessions, and Jesse's live stream video. The judge issued an emergency order. Midnight was to be removed from the processing facility and placed in protective custody pending full investigation. Jesse exhaled. Riley wept. They didn't need to win everything. They just needed one chance. That night, Midnight was taken from the kill lot and transported to Mustang Wilds' sanctuary in Estes Park, Colorado. And Jesse, from his hospital bed, finally smiled, a real full smile. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew this: the truth can hurt, but if you hold on to trust, it can save a soul. Estes Park, Colorado. April Snow still lingered in pockets along the shaded hills, but the air now carried the scent of pine and wildflowers awakening from a long, frozen sleep. Jessie sat on the porch of Mustang Wild's sanctuary, crutches leaning against the worn railing. Out across the open field, the Mustangs roamed free, exactly as they were meant to. Midnight stood about 30 yards away. His black coat shimmered with a purplish sheen in the morning light. He didn't look at Jessie, but every so often his ears twitched slightly, as if still listening for the boy's voice, even though the boy no longer spoke aloud. There was no need. They no longer needed words to understand each other. After the hearing, Wade Henley was officially indicted on 3 charges: falsifying animal transport records, using violent methods in horse training, and violating the Federal Wild Animal Protection Act. Black Hollow Ranch was suspended, then permanently shut down after a series of investigations by the Western Wildlife Federation. Jessie declined every interview request. He had no interest in being a brand, a symbol, or a viral sensation. He just wanted Midnight to be free. Mustang Wilds understood that. They invited Jessie to join the team part-time, helping care for therapy horses and assisting children with anxiety disorders to connect with the wild Mustangs. The job didn't require degrees, only patience, and a heart that had once been broken. Riley entered the sanctuary's recovery program. At first, she only watched the horses from a distance. Then she started feeding them, then touching them. And one day, after weeks of quiet bravery, she walked into a stall without flinching. "I think maybe I'm forgiving that horse," she said once, standing beside Jessie. "It's not the horse who needs forgiving, Riley," Jessie replied gently. "It's us. We need to stop blaming ourselves." She didn't answer, just squeezed his hand tight and warm. The spring opening day of the sanctuary arrived beneath rare, golden sunshine. The valley shimmered with life. Booths offered cornbread and coffee. Laughter echoed across the fields. Over 200 people came. Families from as far as Arizona, people who had signed petitions to save Midnight. Even Lorraine was there, camera in hand, eyes glassy with quiet pride. A small wooden platform stood at the center of the field. Above it, a banner read, "Where Trust Begins Again." The host stepped up, cleared his throat. "We'd like to take a moment to honor a young man and a wild spirit he saved not with a rope, but with love." Jessie stepped forward. No reins, no whip, no helmet. He stood in the middle of the open grass as people quietly formed a wide circle around him. Just him, and the space where a horse might come or might not. Midnight was released from the far end of the field. He walked slowly, cautiously. Not a gallop, not a snort. Just soft, deliberate steps. As if wading through invisible water. Eyes locked on the boy, standing still as a stone. The distance between them closed. Then, just one arm's length away, Midnight stopped. Jessie didn't move. Midnight lowered his head. And then he knelt. A bow, without reins. No one told him to. No one trained him to. No one taught him how. It had taken time, and pain and trust, and a French-deuil that had no name. No one applauded. No one dared break the silence. An old woman near the front whispered, "They laughed at him once, but now they watch in silence." Later that day, after the crowd had gone home, Jessie sat beside Midnight in the golden light of dusk. On his lap was a small book, the same one he had once read from inside the stall. "We've come a long way, haven't we, old friend?" he whispered. "I don't know if anyone will remember us tomorrow, but if some kid somewhere learns that a wild horse can learn to trust, I think that's enough." Midnight leaned in and rested his head on Jessie's shoulder. The sun dipped behind the ridgeline, casting fire across the horizon. A gentle wind rustled the grass, and in that wind, if one listened close, precioso was something soft, like a thank you, from a soul that had once been lost and now had come home. And if anyone asks, can a boy truly change the fate of a horse the world called untamable? The answer is yes. All it takes is to be trusted once. If you believe that one honest gaze can tame even the wildest spirit, comment 1 below. But if your heart tightened when Jesse whispered to midnight in that wind-worn stall, leave a 0 so we know you're here, feeling it too. And don't forget to subscribe to True Animal Stories, because the next tale of survival, courage, and friendship beyond species will touch you even deeper. We tell stories so you can feel them. And so every soul man or horse can finally be heard.